G'day, ZiggyD here, and in this video I want to give you guys a quick look at the character creation in the upcoming RPG Divinity Original Sin. If you guys are fans of games like Baldur's Gate and Fallout 1 and 2, and just good old school RPGs in general, this is definitely one that should be in your radar, and it's only releasing in a few days. So, the character creation in this game starts off pretty basic. If you just want to jump in and sort of have a bit more of a casual romp in this adventure, you can simply jump on here on the screen. You'll notice that there's two characters. There are two main characters that you either control yourself or you and a co-op party member control as well. If you are playing co-op, you can design your characters simultaneously even, so you'll see your friend's character change, as you're sort of designing your characters and all that. Now, if you want to just jump in and sort of have a bit of a casual romp, you can simply just select the class. You can see there's a pretty good number of classes here. We've got Shadowblade, Rayflarer, which is kind of like an agile spellcaster using a bow. We've got witches, which these are all sort of deal with different types of magic. We've got witches, wizards, battle mages, which are more up close and personal. We've got the cleric for some more combat / divine magic sort of setup. And the enchanter, the fighter, the knight, a slightly different variation of the fighter, and the ranger and the rogue. So a good mixture of the different classes there, and you can see they all start off with different starting gear, a different weapon, and things like that. Now this determines your character's initial sort of setup. So we'll take a look at the cleric in this one. But and it does determine your initial starting gear as well. So the gear your character starts out with, which is not a huge deal. It's going to have an impact on your first hour or so of play, but it's pretty easy to get gear for other classes beyond that. But it's kind of just a launching point. So you can, as I said, just simply take the cleric. If you just want to be a cleric, you can go be a cleric. You can click on customize here and actually see what makes a cleric. And there's a bit of a description for exactly what a cleric is. However, the actual idea of classes in this game isn't really like a hard one sort of thing. You can start off use the cleric as your building point class, but you can basically strip it of everything that makes it a cleric. So if you want to, you can simply remove the single-handed weapons, you can remove the defense skills, you can remove everything that makes it a cleric and simply rebuild it again from scratch. Or you can take the idea of the cleric and sort of modify things in small amounts. So it's pretty interesting. As you can see here, we have these are weapon customizations here. So this is the abilities pulled just here, and you can see each one of these expands down, and there's a bunch of different abilities. We have weapons up the top here, which is just deals with your use of the weapons, and you can see it basically gives you damage boosts. So I'm not sure if down the line this has some other impact on combat with those, but essentially at this point it's just level 1 and 2 damage boosts for each of these different types of weapons there. So that's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Defense gives you the ability to sort of wear armor without taking penalties, and can give you extra benefits as well. So we've got Armor Specialist allowing you to use heavier armor and reduce the armor movement penalty. We've got Bodybuilding, which gives you saves against physical statuses, so things like knockdown and stuff like that. Shield Specialist, which allows you to give extra blocking chance with shields, and then Willpower, which is defense against magical things. So this is like all of the different ways you can build defensively, and you could build for a very magical defensive character, or you could build for a very physical defensive character, or you could just go for an all-round tank and build into all of those if you wanted to. We also have these skills here. This skill category is pretty interesting. We'll actually leave this for one moment because it gets a bit more in depth there. Personalities, things like bartering, charisma, leadership, lucky charm. Lucky charm simply gives you a fun extra chance to find some cool loot. I've ran a few characters through the first dungeon with this and found extra golden spoons that I wouldn't have found without it, I think. So it's pretty rad to have. Leadership gives a boost to your party members that can see you, that have line of sight to you. Charisma helps when trying to charm people, and bartering helps with haggling with traders. You then have different craftsmanship, so blacksmithing is weapons and armor, crafting is crafting extra sort of things. I think that includes cooking and potion stuff and things like that. Lawmaster is like identifying things. Telekinesis is moving things telepathically, pretty cool. And then we've got Nasty Deeds, which is kind of like your roguelike stuff, lockpicking, pickpocketing, and sneaking. And you can see that this has, each points in this essentially give you more chance for success in each of these different things. So the skills category, if we jump back up here, is where things get pretty interesting. You can see that what makes up a cleric in this particular instance here, and because I've started changing things around, my character is not actually called a cleric anymore. I'm not actually a cleric anymore. The classes, as far as I understand, aren't even represented in the game. So if you don't like any of the classes and want to create your own, you simply select one as a starting point and then start modifying it. And nowhere that I've seen in game does anyone call you a cleric, or do you have a cleric on your character sheet. You are able to have the freedom to roleplay your character as much as you want, which is really cool. I think this is really nice. You're not shoehorned into playing a particular type of character. So we have the cleric that we originally selected here has Hydra Fist and Man-at-Arms. Now these are the skill categories. These different skill categories are what give you access to skills in the game. And you can learn these after you start leveling up. Whenever you level up, you can simply put a point in one of these and have the ability to learn skills from this skill category. Or you can sort of invest more into it, and you can see level 1 allows you to use 3 Hydra Fist spells, and level 2 allows you to use 5 Hydra Fist spells. So we have Man-at-Arms and Hydra Fist, kind of a mixture of watery type stuff and combat. What makes this actually a cleric is that it took the heal from water, so you can see over here we've got starting classes. Each of these come from these different skill categories, and we took melee, power stance, and divine light, which both come from Man-at-Arms. So let's go into here, and you can see this is the Man-at-Arms tab just here. There's quite a few different Man-at-Arms tabs. There's some that are like, you know, more typical warrior sort of things, melee, power stance. There's things like leadership, combat leadership, like encourage, and then there's things that are a bit more berserkery, like Dust Devil. And then you've got things like cure wounds, you know, for a more like battlefield medic, divine light for your, you know, your paladin or cleric type classes, battering ram, crushing fist, things like that. So this character was themed a cleric just because of the skills and stuff it took, and it kind of looks and plays like a cleric when you first get it. But let's say we want to change this character. Now, maybe I like the Hydra Fist setup, maybe I don't. I might remove Hydra Fist, so not interested in getting the heals. Maybe instead I will stick with the Man-at-Arms. I'll take the Cure Wounds just here instead, and we can use that for our healing. Maybe we're not interested in melee power stance, so we can simply remove melee power stance, and maybe we want to use Encourage. We're now a tanking, sort of inspiring sort of character that has the ability to heal ourselves and heal, you know, our friends. Divine Light's more of a cleric-y sort of thing. I don't really want to be much of a cleric. So maybe we'll switch into something like Crushing Fist, or maybe none of this interests us, and maybe instead we want to pick up something like, maybe we could pick up something like Geomancer, and then we can essentially take a look at what's actually in Geomancer. We can remove Divine Light here, we can click in and scroll down to Geomancer just here, pick Geomancer, and we see there's things like Midnight Oil, which allows you to put oil down on the battlefield. This is like basically chucking a keg of oil down on the field in front of you to slow enemies and maybe combo with some of your Fire Mage friends. So you can essentially take this if you want. As you see, you have a lot of freedom and customization over how you build your character. And having invested into these skills just here allows you to be able to, when you find skill books in the world, to be able to learn skills from that skill class. Now, let's say I'm not interested in Geomancer, I want to stick with a more traditional sort of fighting, tanking, and spanking character. So we might go something like, let's go something like Crushing Fist, which is going to allow us to knock down our opponents a bit, and you can see some of the details there, 90% chance to knock down opponents. This feels like a pretty nice tanking setup. Now we actually have a point left here, so what we could do is probably put some points into bodybuilding. We want to get really tanky on this character. I could even sacrifice some damage by dropping single-handed here and tank into willpower now, so we can absorb lots of damage from from spells. We can avoid spell effects essentially, block, avoid physical effects, and then also wear pretty heavy armor as well. And this is the nice setup. Now, the only reason why we picked Cleric is because we kind of like the fact that we started with a shield and a club and that sort of things, but you could pick any other sort of character you wanted as well. You could pick the Knight just so you start with a two-handed sword, and that just gives you the sort of the starting point. And then, it gets a little bit further on. You can deal with the normal attributes just here, so we're going for a more tanky setup, so I might drop some strength. This might have some negative impacts on my abilities to use some equipment down the line, but it's probably something I can mitigate. But let's go into Constitution. Since we're not using any spells, we can probably drop some more intelligence and then spec into more Constitution. Speed, the ability to act fast in combat and have more action points, isn't a big deal for us, so maybe we'll put that back into strength. Now we've got a 7-8 strength Constitution. We've essentially created a very, very tanky class here, and this is what I want to play. So, and then you can go into talents. This is where you get to sort of really flesh out the character of your character. The character of your character, watch out. So we had already Anaconda deals increased damage with crushing weapons. That's a damage sort of thing. I'm not really too interested in that. Every time you hit or get hit, your gear has 50% chance of not losing durability. This might be a pretty nice one for us. This makes a lot of sense to me as a tanky sort of character. I'm going to be taking a lot of damage. Probably don't want my gear breaking all over the place. You can see all these redded out ones here require points in certain abilities. Some of them require lots of points in extra abilities, and those are ones you can unlock later, I believe. But let's think about something like this. Courageous, immunity to fear, but you can no longer flee from combat. That sounds like maybe a good idea. There's also extra damage against opponents is knocked down. Could synergize well with our Crushing Fist. We could go for... What could we go for? Leech. Leech heals you when standing in blood. Since we're going to be there wailing on opponents and probably standing in their blood and probably standing in a lot of our own blood as well, we actually are able to heal during combat. Pretty cool, and you could sort of characterize yourself as some sort of tanking berserker character that feeds off the life force of his enemies. You can do that if you like. You could spec into any of these sort of things. Let's say we like courageous. We're going to be a courageous tank. And now we have fleshed out our character, our tanky, encouraging, almost impossible to knock down and get rid of. No longer cleric. We're not really a cleric anymore. It says we're a cleric here, but once we actually get into game, it's not going to call us a cleric. We're just going to be our own class. So the character customization system is pretty cool, I think. It's not as in-depth as something like D&D where you roll each of the stats, something like Baldur's Gate, but it's got a lot of flexibility to it, and it's also pretty free. It doesn't feel like you really, if you pick a cleric, you have to stay very pious and things like that. I think it allows a lot of freedom of roleplay, and I think that's what this game is about. So anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed the little highlight video here. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.